Hi there, I'm Susan Beyer, and this is Fun with Research. Thanks for joining me today. One of the common questions that I get is about how long it takes to get research done. If you're an agency trying to support a client, or you're an organization that has a big initiative coming up, that time frame to get the research conducted can seem like a long time. So I thought I'd just sort of share my thoughts about the steps that go into a research project to kind of help you understand where that time is going, and I'll give you some framework relative to our projects here at Audience Audit and how long things usually take. So there are a number of steps to getting research right, and a lot of the time difference involved has to do with how complex your project is. You know, if you already have a set of respondents who are willing to open your email and engage with it and get it back to you quickly, and your question is a simple, do you prefer A or B, it might not take very long at all. That's something that you might be able to put together within a few days and have your answer. But often custom research is a little more detailed and a little more complex. So I think it's helpful to understand the steps. So the first step that goes into any custom research project is a discussion of the goals of the project and the strategy for the research you're doing. And trust me when I tell you that if you skip this or you don't give it the appropriate amount of attention, you may end up with something on the back end that isn't what you'd hoped for in terms of informing your efforts. So it's really important to talk about what you're trying to accomplish with the research. What kinds of initiatives do you want it to help inform? What kinds of questions do you want to have it answer? And equally as importantly, who do you want to respond to it, and how are you going to get them to engage? You know, some organizations have large databases that they can tap into. Some organizations don't, and may need to think about bringing on partners to help access respondents or things like that. So you really want to talk through that. So that goals and strategy stage is really important. Here at Audience Audit, that process usually takes a week or so in conversations with our agencies, the client, some work on our end to sort of get everybody on the same page as to what we're trying to accomplish. The next stage is development of the survey instrument itself. And this could be a survey, as in our work at Audience Audit. It could be the discussion guide for a focus group if you're doing qualitative research. But there is going to be some time involved in actually building the survey instrument that you are going to use. So, for example, in our work, this is the content of the survey, sort of putting together questions and answer options and having people sort of review that and comment on it and finally make that approval, and then building the actual online survey itself to make sure that that content is well presented, that people don't get questions that aren't relevant to them. So all of that survey logic and piping and all of that kind of stuff is part of this process. And for us, that usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks often between sort of revisions and client review and approvals and all of that kind of stuff. So that development phase takes a chunk of time. And then you have to field your survey. So you're sending out invitations, you're putting invitations to your survey and links up on social media. You may be working with partners who are sharing the survey on your behalf to their communities, or with a panel provider who's getting you respondents that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. Fielding can take varying amounts of time. As I said, if it's pretty simple and you're talking to existing customers who are engaged with you for research before, you may be able to get something out to them and get something back within a few days. If you're talking to your customers and prospects sort of on a broader scale, you want to make sure you leave enough time for them to participate in the survey. It can really irritate people if you send something out that says, hey, you know, you might be able to get a $250 gift card or something for participating in this, and the deadline's in 6 hours. You know, that doesn't give people a lot of time to participate. In a B2B environment, you want to make sure to be respectful that people have other things on their plate besides just taking your survey. So for our surveys, we typically are allowing 2 to 3 weeks for responses to come in. If you're working exclusively with panel respondents or a panel provider, sometimes that can go much more quickly depending on how easy it is for them to find the people that you are looking for. So there's a big chunk of time in fielding. And then you've got analysis. And, again, depending on complexity, if you've done a survey in SurveyMonkey or Survey Gizmo or something like that, you can pull up a report that will immediately show you the percentage of respondents that said this versus that, etc. So if it's a very simple analysis and you're just looking at the percentage of people who chose A versus the percentage of people who chose B, or you want to see sort of the demographic distribution of your respondents, that probably isn't going to take too long. But if you're doing more complex analyses, like our segmentation analysis, or you're doing some correlation, or you're piping in information that you have about respondents from your own database, etc., doing pricing research, those things can take longer, and depending on your provider, and how many people they have on their team and how much is on their plate, that analysis phase can take a while. Our segmentation analysis usually takes, again, 2 to 3 weeks to get that analysis done for a client. But you're not done yet, because just analyzing the data isn't enough. You need to assess what it's telling you, which is a whole different sort of practice than just crunching the numbers. You need to sort of sit back and look at the entire body of your data and determine what story it is telling. And then you need to share it with folks. You need to share it with your client if you're an agency. If you're an organization, you probably need to share it with your boss and their boss or some other departments, etc. And depending on how nimble your organization is and how many people you have to pull together, sort of like the goals and strategy and development process, it can take less time or more time. So that sort of gives you the full range from the initial goals and strategy to the assessment, and then however you're going to report that data out, whether you're writing an executive summary or you're creating a PowerPoint with a bunch of charts, or you're doing a live visualization like the ones we use at Audience Audit. So I usually tell clients that our projects take about 10 to 12 weeks. We can do them sometimes in less time with a very nimble client, and if our plate isn't too full, and sometimes it takes longer because clients have a bunch of people to pull in on both sort of the intent and goals for the research on the front end, but also approvals that go through for the content of the survey and for the final manifestation of the survey online, and planning out email campaigns to get invitations out to people or working with partners. So there can be a big range. And I think the best thing for you to do is talk to your research provider. I always ask my clients if there are specific deadlines that they are trying to hit. For example, a big board meeting or a conference at which you want to present the results of the research. And most research providers that I know certainly would do their best to work with you to get the research done in the time frame that you hope to get it done, if that's reasonable. Sometimes that's just not possible, so you need to be aware of that. But there's a lot more than just sort of throwing a survey out there and getting the numbers back. It's a process that, if done well, can yield great benefits, and if it's not done well, it can be disappointing. And this is sometimes what leads organizations to feel like they spent money on research and it wasn't very helpful to them. Sometimes that's the fault of just a poor sort of front end planning. So give that some thought, and if you have any questions, you can always reach me, Susan at audienceaudit.com. Thanks for joining us on Fun with Research. There's lots of videos on the funwithresearch.com site, and we'll have another video for you next Friday. Have a great day.